Thank you very much. Harawira.
Tēnā koe, Mr. Speaker. How much longer did you have to go? Okay. Kapai. Tēnā koe, Mr. Speaker. Kia ora tātou katoa e te whare. Mr. Speaker, this budget talks about the road to recovery, a road that Maori have travelled on many occasions, often diverted, sometimes stonewalled, and many times turned back, but a road we travel constantly in the search for justice and the promise of the tiriti o Waitangi in our everyday lives. And I am reminded today of the great Māori Land March of 1975, which led to the establishment of the Waitangi Tribunal and the treaty settlement process, the foreshore and seabed hikoi of 2004, which gave birth to the mighty Māori Party and the review, and hopefully the repeal of the filthy racist piece of legislation that is the Foreshore and Seabed Act.
Order. The member can't use the word racist.
Even in respect of a piece of legislation?
I'll ask you just to withdraw that comment. Point of order, Maturi Ture.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would just note, having had this debate myself to some extent in previous years, that the rule, as I understand it, is that a member may not call another person a racist person, but is entitled to describe events, or as in this case legislation, as racist on that basis. It is the standing orders and the Speaker's rulings are concerned about calling people racist, quite rightly, but not things.
By applying the word racist, it applies not only to a particular member, but also to parties and members of this House. I'm sure there's another word that the member can use. The Honour, Harawira.
Well, speaking to the point of order, if I might, Mr. Speaker.
No, I've ruled. I'm asking you to continue with your speech.
Very well. Happy to have used the word, happy to have used it in reference to the piece of legislation that is the Foreshore and Seabed Act. And the March for Māori Representation in Auckland just over a week ago, all of which were challenges to the nation that the commitment our tupuna made to the promises of the Tiriti o Waitangi are challenges we take seriously today, tomorrow, and until such time as those promises have been honoured. And we turn to this piece of legislation with the same outlook, the same commitment, and the same desire to see the treaty promise honoured. And I don't mind admitting here today that that road ahead don't look like getting any shorter or any easier to travel. And while we're on the subject of roads, I note that there's been an increase of $1 billion in highway construction projects each year for the next 3 years, with a long-term plan of $10 billion over the next 10 years. And for those who think that $1 billion is a lot of money to spend on roads each year, let me put that into a bit of perspective. $1 billion is a little more than government gets every year to turn a blind eye to the deaths of 4,700 New Zealanders killed every year by the murderers masquerading as tobacco companies. After 9 years, it's a bit rich to hear you saying it now. It's the total amount. It's the total amount offered for the theft of 60 million acres of Māori land over the last 170 years. And it's about what it will cost to build the Waterview criminal bypass that my good friend Melissa Lee sees as being an important investment in the security of Mount Albert. But given how keen New Zealanders have been to take up a more carbon-conscious future and their growing understanding of the perils of peak oil, you've got to wonder how come so much is being spent on roads and how little is being spent on public transport. Spending $50 million on a national cycleway is a great idea, but it hardly signals a genuine investment in alternative transport. And then we see a budget allocation of $172 million for 600 new police officers and $10 million for tasers, even though the recorded crime rate has actually gone down by 8%. And as if either of them are going to turn around the levels of crime, which are determined not by police numbers or by police brutality, but by the level of poverty that this country is willing to inflict on its own population. And for the same strange reason, it's difficult to understand why we're going to be spending an extra $385 million to increase prison capacity, when every intelligent criminologist will tell you that building more prisons leads to neither a decrease in crime nor an increase in rehabilitation. And then we find that of the $385 million, $24 million is being set aside for the planning and design of more prisons, as if after 200 years of the criminal insanity that masquerades as correction policy in this country, government doesn't know how to build the mind-numbing, soul-destroying blocks of concrete that we call jails. And then on top of that, we also find that $145 million is going to be spent on double bunks and cells. And I'm sad to have to report in advance that double bunking may ease the prison population crush, but they will also substantially increase the numbers of rapes, fights, stabbings, maiming, murders, suicides, and the attacks on prison officers that will be a natural outcome of this policy of simplistic sadism and senseless stupidity. I know this because it is already the experience of every Western nation in the world. And in fact, the Dominion Post last week reported the alarming comments of the President of New Zealand's own Corrections Association, Bevan Hanlon, who said that overseas evidence confirmed the fact that double bunking would lead to overcrowding, and that overcrowding would most likely result in a dramatic increase in assaults, suicides, rapes, escapes, and increased psychopathic behaviour amongst inmates. Mr. Speaker, on the upside, we're glad that even though there's a squeeze on, that we're able to get agreement on substantial new money for Maori initiatives. We're glad that the budget of 2009 more than doubles the allocation for Maori than we saw just a year ago. In fact, in 2008, although 53 million was allocated for Maori, most of that was rerouted, refashioned and rebadged money already allocated to TPK. In 2009, however, thanks to a new national government and a fresh breath of air from the Maori Party, we now have more than $120 million set aside specifically for Maori in housing, education, social development, Maori affairs and treaty negotiations. We're glad of the $70 million being spent to straighten out the last government's policy which actually prevented kohanga reo and play centre from accessing the early childhood education entitlement, and we look forward to seeing more Maori children in kohanga, puna reo and preschool education. And while I'm on kohanga, I want to pay tribute to the newly honoured Dame Iritana Tāwhiwhirangi, who was a pioneer of the kohanga reo movement and who will no doubt take greater delight in seeing our mokopuna benefit from the 23-hour early childhood education scheme than she will from the Queen's birthday honour, for which she will be teased mercilessly for months to come. We're glad of the extra $22 million of new money to help streamline the process of treaty negotiations between iwi, hapu and the Crown and reduce the time required to settle claims. We're glad of the extra $20 million of new money to help reduce underachievement by Maori students in mainstream schools. We're glad of the extra $16 million of new money to settle several Maori aquaculture claims. We're glad of the extra $12 million of new money to help Maori build homes in rural communities which are the backbone of Maori culture. We're glad of the extra $3 million of new money for a program to help whānau learn and use te reo in the home. We are particularly glad and thankful to the Green Party for getting government commitment to home insulation, which will benefit many, many Maori families. And of course, I am personally very, very glad of the extra $1.2 million of new money to help iwi radio with operational costs. Mr. Speaker, we know that the most important issue facing us is how we prepare ourselves as catalysts for recovery. We know that we must put the effort in to help our people face a new future. We know that that future depends on our being able to respond intelligently and effectively to the changing political and economic climate, and those challenges lay before us all. Could Māori have done better? Yes, we probably could have. But we're not crying about what we got at all. In fact, given the current economic climate and the fact that we've only been in the job for a few months, what we got is a bloody great start, and heaps more than those miserable buggers in the last government gave to Māori, even with all their massive surpluses. Mr. Speaker, we look forward to getting on with doing whatever it takes to ensure that the money we have been able to secure, thanks to the national government, is used to help Māori to become more and more independent and more positive in the years ahead. Kia ora tātou.